Now, one of my pet hates is when you get back from the shop and you've just bought something brand new and shining, and right in the middle the manufacturer has stuck a sticky label. Now you've got to get that off without damaging your product, and that can be quite challenging. If it's a water-based glue like some of the pickle bottles, you can just soak them in water and eventually the label will just work itself loose and you can wash off the glue. But a lot of the glues are resin-based and they have to be removed with some sort of chemical. If you try and remove them mechanically, you usually have to do so much scraping that you're going to damage your product. Now, these glues are usually oil soluble, so you've got to use an oil solvent to try and get them off. And the one I prefer is turpentine. Mineral turpentine does a good job, but disclaimer here, mineral turpentine can damage the surface of certain plastics and painted surfaces and some varnished surfaces. And all of the oil-based solvents, they can leave an oil mark on something that's absorbent like wood or cloth. So you've got to be careful of all those things. And it's best to test a small area first before you use the solvent to see if there's going to be any damage. Now, although turpentine works very well, it's probably the most aggressive. You can also use WD-40, which is less aggressive on certain plastics than the turpentine. And the other thing that also works is a vegetable oil like olive oil. But in my hands, I find the turpentine works the quickest, but you have to be careful, so just watch out for that. And I'll show you a bit later the sort of damage that you can do with turpentine if you haven't tested first to see if it's going to affect your product. And what I normally do is just try and scrape the surface, the glazed surface of the label away first, and then I'll get in there with some turpentine and I'll use like a coarse cloth or something like that to remove the resin and the rest of the label. And then finally, I use methylated spirits to clean up, because methylated spirits is great because it's water and oil soluble. So you can remove the oil with some methylated spirits on a cloth and then just rinse it off after that, because it's also water soluble. Right, so let's get on with it. I'll just show you my materials first. And then we'll get stuck into taking some labels off. And obviously, if you're using solvents, it's a good idea to work in a well-ventilated space so that you don't get overcome by fumes or anything like that. Outside is probably the best, sit on a veranda or something like that. So let me show you first the materials. Right, that's the kind of cloth I use. It's got quite a coarse surface, so it helps to remove the bits of label that are left behind, and also might use one of these little plastic scrapers to remove bits of the label. And then I just put a bit of mineral turpentine into a bowl and then dip my cloth in there occasionally. But as I said, you can also use a vegetable oil like olive oil, or WD-40 also works. But in my hands, the turpentine is the quickest, but not always the best, because you've got to be careful. And then for cleaning up, I use some methylated spirits, just soak it in a cloth and wipe the surface clean, and then just wash it with a bit of soap and water, and that solves the problem. So here's some labels we're going to tackle that have been stuck all over the products that we've just bought, and we want to get them off without damaging the product too much. And at the end, I'll show you what sort of damage you can experience with turpentine. Now, just to show you the sort of damage that turpentine can do on certain plastics, this is a very hard plastic. I think it's a polystyrene type of plastic, and the turpentine made it go all cloudy, you can see there. And in this area here I tested with meths, and that's fine, didn't do any damage. And on the other side I tested with WD-40 and I tested with olive oil, and none of those did any damage. So in a case like this, after you've done your test and you see that turpentine is going to cause you a problem, then you've got to go for one of the other oils like olive oil or WD-40. Now, if you found this useful, please like and share this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. And if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Just scroll right down to the bottom, you'll find the comment section there. Thanks very much for watching.